The local government is an intermediary player between the federal authority and grassroots in our society. Nigeria is one of the few countries that adopted federal system of government in Africa, a system that envisages autonomy for every sector of the society and of the system. In Nigeria, we do have the federal, state, and local governments. However, over the years, we have had issues with autonomy where the local governments have not been empowered enough to manage the affairs of their constituents. To discuss this on the political segment, I have with us three gentlemen in the studio. And to start with, we have Mr. Barrister Ademola Adeboye, who is a senior associate at Sholola and Akpana. He is a social commentator, a legal political discussant, and analyst. Welcome to the Weekend Show.
Thank you, dear.
We also have with us Akintayo Akintola, who is also a legal practitioner and a social political commentator based in Abuja. You also have a focus in international law.
Thank you.
It's also my pleasure to welcome a friend, Tonye Isokariari, who is a government relations advisor and a public policy consultant. Also, interestingly, he ran for the Abuja Municipal Area Council chairmanship election, the recently concluded elections. Welcome to the Weekend Show, gentlemen.
Thank you, Andy. Good to see you.
We'll go right in. Local government autonomy in Nigeria. Is this feasible? Does this actually work? We'll start with you, Ademola.
Yeah, it's feasible and it should work. But the question is it working on? As we have it now, is it what it ought to be? Then the answer will be no. But I think that tier of government is designed to serve a purpose, to serve the people at the grassroots, the people at the basic, side of the society. So that's what it is designed to do. But it is not doing that now. Because if you look at the structure of the society, that aspect of our life happens to be the oldest. You know, you look at it from when it used to be native authority, when you have the traditional institutions or traditional rulers, the emir in the north, the obas in the west, and the obi in the east. So this happens to be the oldest of the system of government that we have in the country. And as time goes on, there was agitation that this, tier of our life should be should have some statutory recognition, and I think that led to the radical change that we had in 1976 Ibrahim Dansuki committee, which eventually culminated in having it in our 1979 constitution, and that same portion of the law was also retained. Was also retained in 1999 constitution in section 7. So, and the way it is designed is that, like you see, the way the constitution put it, that the local government system is by this constitution, the democratically elected local council is by this constitution guaranteed. So what that means is that that tier of government is expected to be autonomous, and that is how it is designed. But what we are having now is a different ball game entirely.
I'm one of the people who believe that our constitution is one of the most contradictory documents which I've ever seen or heard about, because the same section 7 you speak about and section 162, they both contradict themselves, because when it comes to funding, there's now a different interpretation. And so, Akintayo, I want to hear your take on it, because if we say they are really independent and there are three tiers, which is the federal government, the state, and the local government, we have a situation where funds allocated for the local government is given to the state government, and then the state government chooses to pay to give the local government what they choose to do. In some states, there's a system where the local government chairman have to come and say, this is what I plan to do. They are given only money for salaries to be paid. And so when they have projects, they have to report to the state government and say, this is what we plan to do. So if you drive across Nigeria, you see some local governments that barely exist because zero infrastructure, zero development. So do you feel Section 7 and Section 162, which I believe is contradictory, has a role to play in what we're experiencing right now?
Thank you very much. You've said it, the Constitution sometimes throws up contradictory situations, and like you said, Section 7 of the Constitution, which allows for the national and state houses of assembly to legislate for how the funds going to the local government should be spent, almost contradicts. I won't say there's a contradiction. It's just about interpretation. Almost contradicts Section 162. A very important part of Section 162 is Section 6 to 8, subsection 6 to 8 of Section 162 of the Constitution, which I cannot understand for the life of me why it was included by the drafters of the Constitution. Now you find a situation in which this particular part of the Constitution has created not only a legal conundrum for the local government system, but it has also created an existential problem in the sense that in the past 20 years or so, the local governments at the beginning of the new democratic dispensation started as the recognized third tier of government, and which as recognized by the Constitution. But over time, the third tier of government has been eroded.
It's precisely from 99, because
from
before
1999,
it
yes,
existed,
that's what
yes.
the new democratic dispensation. And it has been eroded. All of a sudden, we find out that gradually we dissolved into a situation in which the state governments have become overlords in their states. And local government chairmen or local government executives, as the case may be, they may not even be democratically elected. In most cases, they are caretakers, appointees of the state governors, have now become answerable to the state governor. And this was created by, that's why I come back to Section 162 sub 6 to 8 of the Constitution, where the states were allowed to determine how the percentage of the money from the state joint local government account that goes to each local government, and they're not answerable to anybody. So it has created a very big problem. When I said it not only created a legal problem, it also created an existential problem, because now we find a situation in which the local government's administrators, budgets are not made in the local government. The local government don't think for themselves. They don't have a budget. They don't have programs. They don't have policies anymore. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. Everything is done from the state capitals. So yes, you're right. If you say that the Constitution has created a gap, and it's one of the things at the bottom line of the discussion on local government autonomy, we have to be talking about a constitutional amendment.
Okay. Tonye, you're a politician. You ran for AMAC chairmanship. Recently, and this year, the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, NFIU, gave a directive saying going forward, local government funds will be paid to the local government account. The President of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, in a remark, endorsed this and said this would help curb corruption, this would improve development, and this is me paraphrasing. Now, the Nigerian Governors Forum, and I'll say this from the last era, which ended in May, or say June 12th, yeah. The NGF came out and said no, that NFIU doesn't have the authority to tell them how to handle their local government and their business. And so they tried to reject it. I want to believe going forward with the new dispensation and whoever, the new NGF may have a rethink about it. But this remains a big problem if they're saying this is how we prefer it. As a politician, as someone who aspires to manage a local government of sorts, what's your position on this?
Thank you, Andy. First of all, it's good to give kudos to the president for, insisting that the local government monies will be sent directly to the local government purse. Now, I don't expect state governors who have, lived fat on that local government, allocations all these years to say, oh, they agree with it. So they will definitely try to fight it. But I know that recently, I think the eighth assembly signed something to law with regards to local government. You see, as a country, we have various issues. But I'm one of the people who believe in that school of thought that if we for us to begin to, attend to those issues, especially with regards to poverty, especially with regards to, the decadence in our society, the society to which we live in, we must attend to the local government. The local government is the first government that every citizen interacts with. So if there's a failure in that system, then the failure goes right up. So I think that the intention of the president is very good, and I give kudos to him. I also know that the NFIU have, they are backed by law, and they've said they're going to send monies directly to the local government. In fact, I heard that the president, I don't know how true it is, but I read it somewhere where the president said that whether the governors like it or not, he's going to send, monies directly. He has given a directive that monies should be sent directly to the local government's account. And they will be held accountable if they decide to give their monies, to their governors. Now, like I said, it's a major issue and we must attend to it. One of the reasons why I decided to run for a local government office is because I felt if you begin to deal with the main people, that's the citizens themselves at that local level, then we can start solving the bigger issues. Now everybody's focused on the federal government. Everybody's focused on, in fact, even states now are focused on the federal government. They've forgotten about that you have a local government chairman and what have you, who before now or now, most of them only come to the local government, when it's time to pay salaries. Some of them don't even live within the locality of that local government, which is an error. So we must begin to ask questions as citizens and demand those things.
I don't know if this is a constitutional issue, because what you've said is very right. Most of these local government chairmen do not even stay in the local government. I know with the NFIU directive, it also says that no cash transaction above 500,000 naira should be withdrawn from this account, this local government account, which on paper looks really great. But with the system of government which we have, where the state governor decides to, if they want to have local government elections or not, or have caretaker committees, could appoint whoever they want. From a constitutional angle, how can the federal government actually act as a watchdog in these local government spaces by jumping over the state governors to get this done? Let me hear from
thank you. I think it isn't as easy as Mr. Tonye has postulated. It's a constitutional issue, and NFIU guidelines cannot, overrule our constitution. The constitution is very clear on how.
But isn't the NFIU backed by constitution?
No, it's not. NFIU is a product of a National Assembly enactment, and then the Constitution is very clear on how monies, allocation will be shared among tiers of government.
Yes.
And by virtue of subsection 5 of section 162 of our Constitution, the money goes from the federal government to the state, what they call state joint local government account. And what the state's supposed to do is to remit the money to each of the local governments in their states. That is what the law states. So now, for NFIU guidelines to now say that the money will go directly from the state, from the federal to the state, that will be unconstitutional, and I'm pretty sure that the state governors will challenge that.
Which is why they are
So I think the radical thing we can do in the circumstance that we have found ourselves This is a constitutional amendment we should be thinking about if we are really keen on changing things the way they are now. But you know, the point is that the state governors are supposed to be trustees of these monies. It's not really for them. So, and we can't just, for everything that happens, and tinker with our constitution every now and then. It's just that this class of politicians have just chosen to be, you know, who they are.
Ademola, but let me just get this right.
Yes.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yes.
So do you agree with the and the Governors Forum's position on the fact that NFIU can't tell them what to do? As a Nigerian, besides the legal parameters, because we see a lot of this on paper, but let's speak about the applicability of this. What NFIU has said, do you agree with their guidelines?
Their guidelines look nice, and I would have, you know, wanted it that way. But what we are saying here is that ours is a constitutional democracy, and things must be done according to the law. Of course, these governors, you may want to argue too that are the governors also, you know, following the law? Because if you look at Section 7 that I have cited, it says that the local government administration must be governed by democratically elected, you know, officers. And apart from that, there have been decisions of the Supreme Court on this, that the state governors do not have right to appoint caretaker committee members.
Okay,
but we still keep seeing this.
I'm going to hold that. Akintayo, I see you smiling. Now, this is largely a constitutional issue, and this is a big problem. Ademola has been a little bit political and legal, but the reality is right in front of us.
Right.
I'm not sure, but I definitely recall that amongst the proposed constitutional amendment that came through, local government autonomy was one of those. Well, I think it didn't pass when it was put to vote. I don't think it was passed, which is why we have the same issue. What do you feel should be done to get this right? Because our representatives, which is the National Assembly, have said, you know what, we're happy with the governors doing what they've been doing, which means technically how much do we care about the local governments?
Right. So about local government autonomy, we're not hearing anything new today. The Justice Alpha Begore report pretty much said all we needed to do to achieve an effective local government autonomy. I'm saying that we're in a situation where sometimes we find ourselves putting the cart before the horse. But if you've put the cart before the horse, at least give us the horse. You don't hold the horse back.
In layman terms, please.
In layman terms, the NFIU guidelines, brilliant. And as a matter of fact, the NFIU guidelines were not enacted with internal matters in mind. I remember they mentioned that
literally forced by a global agency that we
exactly
needed to
Nigeria was falling behind
yes.
on the index of anti-money laundering and corruption issues. Our lines were too porous between the government the government agencies and the governmental tiers. So they had to do something. Nigeria had to meet up. So I understand and I'm in full concert with the administration on the NFIU guidelines. But the truth is, as my little colleague has said, if you bring the NFIU guidelines, section 1, sub 3 of the Constitution is very clear. Any law that tries to function against the tenets of the Constitution shall, to the extent of its inconsistency, be void. So the NFIU, I can understand the sentiments of the state governments.
Can an executive order fix this?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
Tonye, because we are short of time, the NFIU guidelines, this directive was meant to kick off from the 1st of June. So it's the end of June tomorrow. So we're hoping to see what would have happened. But final words, what do you think should be done realistically?
Of course, the constitutional review needs to take place.
How many times?
With regards to the National Assembly and with regards to local government autonomy. But for me, like I said, I'm more interested in people who want to actually see Nigeria actually start some form of development. So when we look at these guidelines and we look at governors trying to fight it, my question is, why are they trying to fight it? why are they, trying to kick against such things? It's not supposed to help the development of those local governments. Because I'm looking at it, for instance, some of the floodings that are taking place in the south is as a result of complete failure of the local government because of sanitation issues, which is at the, exclusive right of the local government. But because, this local government or caretaker committees or whatever you call them, are answerable to a governor who decides on who his friends are and who his friends are not, and decides to put different people. A lot of people are caretaker. In fact, I'm not sure there are a lot of states that have actually functioning local governments.
They're not.
They don't. In FCT, for instance, we have, FCT is a bit different in terms of how, the local government functions. However, even with, having AMAC and the other various local Buhari and the rest of 6 of them, how have they impacted into the lives of the citizens? We must at every point in time think about the people that we are, we want to govern. Because as leaders or people who are leaders, you're not there for yourself. You're there, you are appointed or you are, elected for the purpose of the people. So anytime the people are hurting, that means you're not doing something right. And in this case, there's a failure, complete failure. And again, when I ran for election, I went to certain communities, and I literally shed tears all the times I went to those communities. And they're within Abuja.
Yeah.
They're within Abuja. They're not even far from us.
So, Tonye, Akintayo, and Ademola, we all agree a lot needs to be done.
Yeah.
If it takes amending our constitution 1,000 times, we need to do it. We need to hold government accountable. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you on the political segment of the Weekend Show. We hope to continue this conversation online, and you can check out social media pages at Weekend Show NG. Also, we do have a website. But we must have these conversations continually, and as lawyers, you also have a role to play in pushing for this constitutional amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, the Weekend Show will be back with the sports segment. Don't go away.